But thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm so excited to talk with you about our justice system advocacy program. So one of the cool things about this program is that it's really a fundamental piece of the services we've provided in the community. So we've been around quite a few years in our history in this organization, providing advocacy services. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I do have obviously some slides prepared, and I'm going to do sort of the high level overview of what we do, but please ask questions. I purposely left time at the end so we can have a chat. So I want this to be as engaging as we can be over Zoom. So I want to start with the domestic violence in the criminal justice system kind of overall. So we know that many victims of domestic violence do not involve themselves in the criminal justice system for a variety of reasons. Some people don't call law enforcement to report incidents. Some people just don't want to be involved in the criminal system. For a variety of reasons, and that's just the reality of this work. We also know that domestic violence is really complicated, and not one system is ever going to be able to address domestic violence. So I just like to start here because I think domestic violence in the criminal justice system is an important kind of dynamic to talk about. But what I do wanted to present was this study that the Ohio Domestic Violence Network did a couple years ago, and they surveyed survivors across the state, and they found that 85% had police involvement in either their current or previous domestic violence incident. And regardless of race, 2/3 of those survivors reported they would call the police again. And so this is super interesting because we do know that there are victims that will never call police for help. But what this tells us is that many victims do call police for assistance. Many of the victims that we work with, or that other agencies that are involved with domestic violence work with, many of those clients are touching their criminal system. And so that's why having advocates available is really important. We also know that victims call the police because they want the violence to stop, not necessarily because they want their offender incarcerated or arrested. And so that is often a frustrating piece of working in the criminal system for court personnel, prosecutors, judges. It's often frustrating because victims might not want to participate as they move through the court process. And that is just a reality of the work that we do. Victim engagement in the criminal system is complicated. There's lots of factors there at play, which we can talk about if anyone wants to kind of dive there. But that's why I want to start with this, because it's really important to understand that the advocate's role is to be a support and voice for what the victim wants. This may or may not be participation in the court process. This may or may not be their offender being incarcerated. This may or may not be this criminal system. And so the role of the advocate, it's all about empowerment, self-determination. What does this victim want? What's best for them in the moment? And obviously, advocates can work with victims in a variety of places. Some people are wanting to go through the court process and do want to participate, and we can be a support in both of those scenarios. I think the most important thing about advocates is that it's leaving the door open for the future. We understand that the clients that we serve may come in and out of the criminal system, and we have to be there and ready for them when they're ready for our services. So just an overview of our justice system advocacy program. So we empower victims of domestic violence and advocate for justice within the criminal or civil court system. That's the majority of the work that we do, is working within the criminal or civil court system. However, we are still community advocates. So we are community-based advocates who work out of the courts. So we're available in the majority of municipal courts in the county. And we're also have an advocate in our domestic relations court, which works with clients who are seeking a civil protection order. What's super important about this to understand is that while we do work out of the courts, we don't work for the court. We are journey employees. We really work for the client. We're there to talk with them about the process, about what to expect. We do all of those things, but we are not court employees. And that's really important because that means that we can really truly work for the best interest of the client, because we really are just sort of a neutral party. We want, we're there for what the client would like us to be there for. And so that's really kind of an important piece. And like I said, the reason that we sort of started off talking about how domestic violence in the criminal system is complicated is this focus on autonomy. We truly believe the client is the expert in their life. And so we're never going to be there to tell people what to do or what they should do or what's in their best interests. It's about providing options, telling people that these are all of the things that are available and these are all of the ways that you can be involved in this process, and then letting them sort of take the wheel of what is best for them. Really important, advocates are not attorneys. So while our advocates in justice system program have lots of justice system knowledge, they understand processes, they understand language, they understand what's going on in the case. They're not attorneys, and so they do not and cannot legally give it legal advice. And so again, it's about providing options, not, hey, you should do this. And that's really an important thing, distinction. So in 2023, we served almost 1,200 clients, which is really great. We know that like I think I sort of referred to on the first slide, that many victims do end up in the criminal process. And so we're just so happy that we're able to kind of be there as they navigate that piece. Keep losing my mouse, okay. So just for those who are not familiar with our agency in terms of where our justice system advocates cover, so all of these locations are somewhere where a journey advocate is working out of that court. So we are available in all of these places. Some of them are in a little bit different of a capacity. Like we have a West Side high risk advocate who works in addition to a court advocate in Rocky River. So we have some unique partnerships in the community. We also have an advocate who is stationed a couple days a week at our Family Justice Center. So she is available a few days a week through that organization to assist clients, assist walk-ins who might be looking for civil stalking protection orders, things like that. And so we have a few unique positions, but this is everywhere in the community where we are located. So I've sort of talked about this as we went through, but just a little bit more about the specific services that are provided. So emotional support is a huge one, and emotional support is not, it's not necessarily like a really straightforward thing, but clients, this is a really emotional time that they're going through. It could be the fear of what's going to come next. It could be the unexpected nature of the court, or maybe they really don't want the criminal process to happen, or there's a lot of fear and just anxiety about how all of this is going to go. And so our advocates are there to try to alleviate that as best they can, and then provide that emotional support. So that could include just being with someone at a hearing, listening to them, talking through this process, just any type of emotional support that victim might need. Safety planning is huge. Safety planning is ever changing as client circumstances change. And so safety planning is safety planning for that person. So do you need to change your route to work? What's happening with kids pickup at daycare? But it's also about safety planning for beyond that abuser. So, if you're going to stay with this person, what does that look like? If you're leaving this person, what does that look like? And what are some community factors you have to take into consideration? Financials and childcare and custody and family and all of those kind of dynamics. They also provide lots of information about the system and the process. Because if you work in the criminal system, you think it's super straightforward. It's not. And the criminal system and the civil system, the court system in general, is just really confusing. And so there's different names of things, and there's legal terms, and there's different locations you have to be in, and the whole process is just kind of confusing. And if you've never engaged in the criminal process before, it's really difficult to sort of understand what's going on. And so just providing that basic information is really important. And then this advocate can provide assistance through the court process if the victim would like that assistance. So that includes going to court with the client, helping that client, sort of talking through what a victim impact statement might look like, advocating for things like restitution, helping them with crime victim compensation applications, talking with the prosecutor if the client would like that to happen, talking with the prosecutor about the case, giving that client updates, really anything that they might need around that court process. And then we also provide client assistance, resources, and referrals. So if a client maybe has difficulty paying a utility bill, helping that client connect to resources that can assist them. We're really looking at short-term assistance, but also connecting clients to community resources for the future to increase that financial stability. And then the justice system advocates also provide support groups. And so I'll talk about those here in a little bit. So this is kind of a typical day in the life of a justice system advocate. These are, typically the advocates that work out of a municipal court. This is kind of their daily. And so the first thing is, starting bright and early, checking those court calls in the court docket from the previous night, making sure that if there was a call for service that the police responded to, and maybe that case is going to be heard in the morning for a TPO hearing, or there's going to be some type of hearing the next day, making sure they're touching base with those clients. And the reason for this is to make sure that that client knows that we're even available. If that person has never been to the court before, they don't know that an advocate is even somebody that they can talk with. And so our advocate wants to make that contact early on. So again, making contact with the client prior to court to explain the process, plan where to meet them at the courthouse, just letting them know, hey, I'm going to be there if you would like to meet, and we can talk about this and, get to know each other and talk about what the hearing is going to look like. Let's do that. Again, attending hearings, talking with court personnel, being with the client during the process, make sure the clients receive temporary protection orders if it's applicable. Just again, making sure this client is sort of understanding what's going on as the case moves forward. And then after court, our advocates make calls to their clients regarding all of those things: benefits, housing, childcare, information referrals, all of those things. Checking in with clients, the court process takes a long time. Even in the municipal courts with misdemeanors, they can be a lengthy process. And there's not every day something isn't happening. And so just kind of touching base with people, making sure that they still, are engaged with our services and anything they need, that kind of thing. And then in the evening, some of our advocates do facilitate peer-to-peer support groups, which we'll talk about in a second. So the majority of our referrals for JSAP come through the court or law enforcement. And the reason for this is because, again, we know so many people are entering the system through those places that we want to be available in those locations. We also want to make sure we're connected in those places, because we know that the faster that our advocate can connect to that client, the more likely that client will engage in services. And victim connection to service is a protective factor. So the more clients we can get connected to community-based advocacy services, the safer that they ultimately are. And we also work with clients within or outside of the court process. So again, the client does not have to engage with the court process in order to work with an advocate. And I just want to be, really clear about that even if this person has no desire to show up to court, no desire to talk to the prosecutor, that's okay. And the advocate can talk with them about that and would still continue to provide services, even if the court process isn't necessarily what they want to do. So like I said, the majority of our referrals come through law enforcement or the court, but also if you are a community organization, you have a client, you can refer clients directly to an advocate. It gets a little bit tricky in Cuyahoga County because there are different offices that provide advocacy in different places. So for example, Cleveland Municipal Court, the advocacy that's provided there is through Witness Victim Service Center. All of these things are kind of like nuance that I don't want to dive into crazy today. But the best thing you can do is if you would like to call our helpline, or you could reach out to one of us here at Journey, we can direct that client to where they need to be. Like I said, we have our locations that are displayed on the map, so you can be pretty sure that, or almost positive that those are the right advocates to connect to. But there are some nuances in our community just based on how our sort of advocacy landscape is laid out. But you can refer to the advocate who works where the domestic violence incident took place. So if they live in South Euclid and the incident happened in South Euclid, that court case is at least going to originate out of South Euclid. And so that is the advocate that would be the appropriate connection. And you can refer through the helpline. So I mentioned that we also provide support groups. These are free, open-ended weekly support groups for people who have experienced violence. So these are not for perpetrators. These groups are specifically for those who have experienced abuse. These are facilitated by a justice system advocate, and in some of the groups, there's a volunteer that also kind of co-facilitates. But this is peer-to-peer support. This isn't a therapeutic group. This is meant to be, clients and victim survivors really working with one another to provide support to each other, really speaking from that place of experience and things that they've gone through, and being able to share that with the group and share that support across peers. This also can be referred through our helpline. So if you have a client or you're interested in a support group, all of that information you can get through the helpline. There's a small screening process involved with that. Basically, the client will have to talk to a facilitator just to kind of do those safety checks, make sure that there aren't any safety concerns, make sure they're appropriate fit for the group. Again, making sure they're victims of domestic violence and not necessarily perpetrators of that violence. And then once that screening is done, they will give them the location, because all of that is confidential for safety. So we also engage in systems change work as a justice system advocacy program, because there are always ways that we can make the civil and court process better. It doesn't always function great for victims and survivors. And so that's sort of our role on many of the multidisciplinary teams and committees that we are a part of. We try to provide that victim perspective. And so if there is, some changes that need to be made with a protection order process, or how the cases are coming on felony cases, or any of those kind of things, we want to be present there to talk about what it's like to be a client, and how these processes positively or negatively impact the victims and survivors we serve. And then lastly, we do have this homicide prevention focus. So that is my role here. I'm specifically sort of focused on this homicide prevention piece. I don't want to go a ton into it because I know that we're actually going to be doing one of these in October, I believe, for homicide prevention. But I do just kind of want to mention that that's also part of the work that we do. And so one of the pieces of that is incorporating lethality assessment into our community's response to domestic violence. That's through things like the danger assessment for law enforcement, which police use. We also have a high risk team that operates out of Cleveland. And then we also have 2 advocates within our justice system advocacy program that are high risk justice system advocates that really specifically try to focus on these high risk clients and getting them engaged in our services. So I will put this up here. This is our trainings coming up. So if anyone's interested, you clearly registered for this one, so you probably know where to find this information, but always go to our website for these trainings that are coming up. And then just to mention that April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. So obviously I didn't talk too much about that today, but here is all the stuff we've got going on for April. All this is available on our website too, toolkit, calendar events, all kinds of good stuff. So just want to leave that up here as well. So we have about 7 minutes. So if anybody has any questions, I'd love to, make sure you get out of this what you were hoping to. So you can either drop them in the, just drop them in the chat. That would be great.
Thank you so much, Molly. I liked the day in the life of advocate. I thought that was super helpful. We do have a question. So someone asked, I am an attorney who is appointed to advocate for a victim of sexual assault. Does the trauma therapy that your facility provides open to people from other jurisdictions?
When you say other jurisdictions, do you mean like out of the county or
Yes, Lorain County.
Megan, I'm not sure. Do you know if we are able to take clients outside of the county?
I am not sure. I would think yes. That's a question you could call and have. So your client would need to do the therapy referral intake. I will say, so our therapy lunch and learn from last month is not yet up on the website. I will get that up if that's something you're interested in, but they would be able to answer those questions. There is also Safe Harbor Genesis House in Lorain County. That's kind of a sister organization that may help. They also ask, can people who are victims in pending charges get trauma therapy while criminal cases are pending against the abuser? Absolutely. Yeah, there's no timeline for any of our services. Therapy, justice system advocacy, someone's going through the process, has been out of it, there's no requirements for services.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Just trying to emphasize that, like Megan said, oh, that's interesting. Many places have refused there because of pending charges. Yeah, I cannot see why that would be as long as the person referred for services is not the perpetrator of the violence, I don't see how that's a qualification. So like Megan said, there is no oh, okay, I see. Yeah, so I would definitely have that client call to do that intake, and then one of the therapists will reach out and they'll do a screening initially, but then talk to the person directly about kind of like things to expect and all of that good stuff. So yeah, I would definitely refer. I'm not aware that has ever been any type of qualification that turns people away from services.
Yeah, thanks for the questions. Other questions while we have Molly here about justice and advocacy. Like Molly said, she will be back in October to talk specifically about her homicide prevention work and what we're doing throughout the county with the Dale and things. Next month, we will be joined by our visitation center manager. And then we just released on the website our second half of our lunch and learns for our domestic violence housing first project, emergency shelter, Latina project, and systems change advocacy as well. So some of talking about the advocates as well as our policy stuff. So Molly,
I would just add that, the helpline is always the best way to really get in touch with us. But if you have a very specific advocacy question, please reach out. Especially, like I said, our advocacy in this county is very nuanced in terms of, necessarily like who the best person is or who might be assigned in that case the long run. And so you can always reach out to us, and we'll make sure that person gets directed. We don't love to bounce people around, so really just try to get them connected to the right place. Hopefully it's us, but if not, we can get them where they need to be.